Hi, my name is Professor Yael Fisher. I'm the rector of Achva Academic College, which is located in the southern part of Israel. We're going to talk in the next few minutes about the art of presentation, not only a PowerPoint presentation, but we will address that as well. We're actually going to talk about how we stand in front of audience, what do we say, what don't we say, when do we say what. So let's start. When we start a presentation, we have to ask ourselves the famous 5 W questions. We start with why, and then we say, okay, what is actually our goal for this presentation? What do we want to see at the end of it? What do we want our audience to remember after it? Can we stand behind what we're going to say? Behind the words, we're going to give facts. Do we really know the facts? Do we understand the facts? And of course, do things actually match the target audience? Who are we going to talk to, or who are we going to make this presentation before? So that's the why question. And now we're going to go to the what question. The first thing that we have to remember at this stage is we have to write down on a piece of paper, just take a blank piece of paper, write down everything that comes up to your mind about your presentation. Doesn't matter if you think this has to be at the beginning, if this has to be at the end. Just write down everything. And then we go to the who question. And we say, okay, who are the characters that actually are going to sit and hear our presentation? What language do they speak? We're going to have this conference in English. Are there English speakers? Will I have to actually speak all the time in English? Maybe a few words in a different language and then translate it? Make sure you know exactly who's going to sit in the room. And then, if I want to come to some kind of a decision, is the decision makers, or are the decision makers sitting with us in the room? Because to sit in a presentation saying, let's decide about what is going to be the length of a class, for example, but the principal is not sitting with us, I can't ask this question. There'll be no point of the discussion. The other thing is, how are actually my audience going to sit? Now we have a room which I'm not sure you can all of you see, but it has like something similar to a round table. Is it going to be a round table? Are people going to sit in rows? Because then it's a different kind of lecture. When they're sitting near a round table, I have to move my eyes like that and make sure. But when we're sitting in rows, maybe I just have to, move from left to right, but I have to know exactly how the room is going to be set for. The fourth question is where. Where actually is my lecture going to be? What is the environment? Is it going to be a light room? Is it going to be a dark room? Is it going to be a small room? Is it going to be, am I going to stand on stage or a podium? Again, we're talking about the table part. If we'll see here, this is an example of a kind of room which I can give lectures. But I don't know if the room where I'm going to give my lecture is going to, what kind of room is it going to be? Go in at least 15 minutes before you start any lecture. Look around. Say, okay, that's the place I'm going to talk. Where exactly do I have to insert my disc and key? Is my presentation ready already? We'll talk about it later as well. But look around. See how it looks. See if you feel comfortable walking, maybe sitting. You can sometimes even sit on a table and it's fine. You can sit like this, but depends who your audience is. Don't sit on a table during a conference. But if you're talking in a class, when you know everyone, you can do that as well. And then we go to the how. The how is actually what is the order of what I'm going to say. That means if I go back to what, now I start to prioritize it. What is going to be the first thing I'm going to say? What is going to be how I'm going to end the presentation. So remember, we have 5 questions because this is the main part. Never start a presentation before really preparing for this presentation. Now we're going to the next thing. When we give a presentation, we actually have the audience, which is all of you sitting right here now. We have the presenter, which is me, and we have the content. These are the three only things that matters during a presentation. Now I'm going to say something that I'm not sure that all of us are going to be happy about what I'm going to say, especially the teachers that are sitting here around the tables. The voice intonation plus the body language are larger than the value of words. When I say that, I mean that the way the audience actually, the perception of the lecturer is body language, 55%. Intonation, 38%. And the content, only 7%. Now imagine, we're standing in a classroom, okay? Most of us are teachers or educators. We're standing in a classroom. We speak for an hour and a half. We talk about World War II. We're really into it. But if I'll speak, for example, you know, World War II started at, or for example, I'll look with my eyes down, or I'll sit in a chair and not move. They won't remember anything of that. But if I'll use my hands and I'll smile when I have to smile, don't smile if you don't have to smile, all that they'll remember much more than any words said in a lecture. So that will mean that when you go back to what I'm actually going to say during the lecture, you have to make sure that you're saying what they want them to remember and saying it how you want them to remember. You have to remember with that very important thing that when you talk, people do much more than just listen to you. Actually, they feel your involvement, your enthusiasm. Do you really like what you're talking about? And at the end of it, you're not just selling your lecture, you're actually selling yourself. So you know, when we have to sell ourselves, let's do the best way we can. Now, let's talk a minute, and as you'll see here, I'm going to show it on the screen. We have here, this is the whole structure of what I'm going to talk to you about. It's going to be the same when you're going to give a lecture as well. So if you just saw it, we went from general, which is up here, and now we're moving to the structure. Now I'm going to talk a little about a structure of presentation, but still I want you all to remember, we're not talking only about a PowerPoint presentation. We're talking about a presentation. So when we talk about the structure, the opening is only 5 minutes. I'll talk about the opening in a second. The content, which of course is the main part of what we're saying, is 80%. And then we do have to have like a summary, a closure, which is 15%. The opening is like a trigger. It's something that has to be like, oh my God, what is she going to tell us about? So I want to give you a very small example. We're going to watch a very short movie just to understand exactly what we're talking about.
When are you going to get out of here?
In a while. I gotta get back.
I love you, Mama!
I love you too, baby!
All of us thought that this is going to be like this dramatic prison daughter-mother thing. It's just a simple commercial. But you have to find the right thing. You can't give something that's not connected. Right now I gave you something that has nothing to do with the art of presentation, but it really demonstrates that you have to give something very strong. Why? Because you want to start with something that the audience, in 3 seconds, look at you and say, oh my God, what is she going to say right now? So we start from there. Don't lecture, talk. People are bored listening to someone who just talks and talks and talks. Listen, we're not all Steve Jobs, okay? We won't be. But at least we can even stand in front of a mirror and then say, okay, how do I look? Is it normal? Am I frozen? Am I afraid? Am I laughing too much? Maybe I'm talking too much with my hands. You know that Israelis talk a lot with their hands all the time. We move our hands. So the Israeli among us that are watching me right now, calm down, okay? We don't have to do like this in order for someone to listen to us. Calm down a little, it's okay. So don't lecture, talk. And remember that create a dialogue and not only a monologue. You know, it's not that during a lecture, especially in conferences, you don't answer usually questions during the lecture. But look at your audience, look around the room. See how they feel. And if you feel they're not listening, do something. Whether it's this or, hey guys, something that will wake them up and will make them listen to what you're actually going to say. Now about the content of any presentation you're going to give. The Pareto rule is a rule that we know from many other areas, but it's the same here in any presentation. 80% of the main things that are going to be in the presentations, only 20 of them are the most important things. How it works, honestly, I have no idea. But when I hear a lecture, I know that 80% I could leave out, and I have to go only to the 20% of the most important things. So now we go back actually to the pen and paper, or you can use the computer, it's fine. And I start writing down. And then I say, okay, what are the important and unimportant things I'm going to talk about during my presentation? Don't feel sorry to leave out things. It's fine. People are not going to remember every word you're saying. But write it down and think about it. The second thing is do some kind of brainstorming. Either you do it with yourself, but it's much better to do brainstorming with friends. It could be one of your kids if you want to do it with them, whoever you feel like doing it, and ask them, okay, tell me, these are the things I actually want to say. What do you think is important? What do you think it's not? What if you would have heard my presentation? What do you think I should say, and what do you think I should give up? The third thing, it's very interesting, this part actually. People remember only 7 main issues. By the way, this is right for a presentation in a conference, but in a TED Talk, people remember only 3 things. But now we're not talking about TED, maybe we'll have an opportunity to do that as well. 7 things only. So if you have like a research that has, I don't know what, like 20 important things you actually think they're the most important things in the world, pick up only 7 of them and talk about them. People won't remember more of that. Now we're talking about a hierarchy of ideas. We have our ideas. We know what we want to say. Start with the most important thing you want to say. If we're talking about a research, give the main thing you found out in your research. Don't keep it for the end. Why? Because you already gave some kind of introduction. Now people want to know, okay, that's fine. We heard you, it's great. What is the most important thing you found? And then go down, and we're talking about only 7 main ideas. The last thing is the attention. What do I mean by attention? When you talk in front of a group, you'll see that some people are looking straight at you, but actually you see some kind of a blank look at them. It's the same as sitting in a concert or sitting in a theater, and then all of a sudden, all of the audience clap their hands. And you're looking at them and you say, oh my God, why are they clapping their hands? The reason that you can't remember why they're clapping and why you didn't notice it is because of the next fact. In every lecture, or actually every class we give or anything we do, we have a kind of a wave of attention. Now, if we look at the screen, between a regression in ourselves, in our attention, to a peak, we have between 2 and 3 minutes. So if that happens in a theater, and you're at the regression part, everybody else will laugh or clap their hands, but you have no idea what happened. It can happen during a lecture. So what do? Look around, see if you see this look in the eyes that you feel that they don't understand. You can repeat it. Just to make sure, if it's important, go over it again to make sure, because you remember that we're talking of kind of a wave syndrome. And now, what do I do a minute before? And still, I'm not talking about a PowerPoint presentation. I'm talking about a presentation. A minute before I start my presentation. If you have, and I really, really think it's important, if you are preparing a presentation, print it out. I have to tell you a small story. A couple of years ago, we also had an international conference here at Mofet. I was the first lecturer in the morning, and I had to do it in English. And as I walked into the class that I had to give the presentation, no electricity in all of Mofet. Nobody knew what to do. And it was like kind of a complicated lecture. I was standing there and I said, oh my God, first lecture, international. What are people going to think about us? I stood up and I said, hi, good morning, guys. We're going back to basic. We're going to the whiteboard, and I'm going to write everything on the whiteboard. Actually, I think that was one of the better lectures I gave. So prepare, print out your slides. You can never know what's going to happen. I'm not talking about, of course, preparing 2 discs on keys, have your presentation on a cloud, have it everywhere you need. But really think about it, that maybe you won't have electricity. It happened to me. I hope it won't happen to you, but it could happen to you as well. So the first thing is, when you go to wherever you go, we'll talk about where exactly you give your presentation. Take the printed slides and put it, you know, we have these nylon bags. Put each page in a different nylon bag, but don't hold them too close. When you walk up to wherever you're going to give the presentations, you know, be comfortable. Don't let the audience feel that you're nervous. And even though you're nervous, most of the people are still very nervous when they speak before audience. It's fine. Don't feel bad about it. It's okay. It's human. The next thing, as I said before, you have to print notes, because you can't remember everything by heart. So when you print your notes, print them in large fonts. When I say large, we'll talk in a minute about how large fonts actually have to be. But they have to be large enough that if you're wearing glasses or you're not wearing glasses, you can read them. Don't use the regular 12 font of whatever kind of font you're using. At least 16, 18, and double space. Because otherwise you can miss what you really want to do. You have to see it. It has to be clear, not to make you nervous. I said it 2 minutes ago, but I'll say it again. Each printed page in a different nylon, small nylon sack. Because sometimes pages stick together. And I need to make sure that when I turn over a page, if I have notes, they're on a different note, not the same note. And we saw it so many times, lectures, that go and read and say, oh, where? And they have this, they stop a second and they really don't know where they are. Try to avoid that. Walk, if you're talking in front of a podium, walk really confident of your walk. This is interesting. Don't hold very close to your hand, to your chest, anything, okay? It shows that you're really, really nervous. So when you walk right like you're walking to a store or to sit with a friend on a cup of coffee. When you reach either it's a podium or a desk or wherever, before you turn to the audience, stand a second. Give a very deep breath. Something reminds yoga, but it's not yoga. Just inhale and exhale. Not, you know, like the dog breath. I'm not talking about that. Just like breathe in, breathe out. Relax your body, especially if you're not regular to stand in front of audience. It will give you this second to put everything together and be ready before you start your presentation. If you're talking from a podium, don't put your elbows on the podium. For example, like this. It's not only that it's not nice, it's rude. So avoid it. Usually the best thing is to stand, you know, very comfortable, very easygoing. The best thing to do is to put actually the weight between your legs. Not too wide, not too close, but stand very easily between and divide the weight. Usually it's the whatever's comfortable for you. But let the audience feel that you're comfortable when you're speaking, because that's what they want to see. Okay, now I do want to talk about PowerPoint presentations. I have a feeling, I'm not sure about it, but I have a feeling that in a few years, when we'll come to conferences like this one, we're not going to be using PowerPoint anymore. I think we're towards like the end of using PowerPoint presentations. Today we have Doodle, for example. Doodle is the thing that, you know, we see the people standing with the hand and writing during the time we're talking. We have a lot of software dealing today with presentations. But still, most of us use PowerPoint presentations. So let's see like a few tips about it. And as you can see on the screen, we moved now to the tips part. We finished the structure, now we're moving to the tip parts. So the first tip that actually I want to give you is use light background and dark writing. If you use the opposite, like dark background and light writing, it can be only if you have pictures and only a few words. But if you're using a presentation and you want to give data, use light background, dark printing on it. If you're using, like I use here, like the buttons or whatever we see on the side, use very strong colors. Now remember, not whatever we can see on the screen is what we really planned at home. So make sure it's strong, because sometimes the color will be a different color. The second thing is don't put a lot of words on the presentation. Right now what you see is that I am using words on the presentation because I'm trying to guide you how to prepare it. But in a regular presentation that when I talk in conferences, only very few words. Because actually the presentation is not instead of the lecturer. It's a help for the lecturer, but it's not instead of the lecturer. So put a few words, just let the lecturer has to remember what he wants to say. If you can use the lecture instead of the presenter, let's just put it online and leave it out. We don't have to have the presenter. So don't overdo that. What I do usually in my presentations, I use Tahoma. Why? Because it relaxes the eyes. I know that a lot of presenters use what we call Ariel or David. Leave them out. They tire the eyes. So Tahoma, it has like a little soft ends to it. It's easier to read. Try not to go under the size of 18. Because under the size of 18, what happens? The audience can't read it. And then they start asking, what did he say? What's written on the board? What is it? 18. You can use 16. Sometimes we see with 16 as well. If it's a small room, for sure. If it's a large hall, so, well, actually the projector is better, so you'll see better. But try not to go beyond that. Do not use animations. This is something that I'm trying to explain all the time. The animations that we have a lot of options in PowerPoint, but swivel, swift, up, down, what it does, people get lost. They can't absorb it. They have to see clean animations. Usually what I use fade, which is a very soft coming in for the animations. Sometimes when I have an arrow, I do use other things, but most of the time it's fade. It's enough. Believe me, people don't want to see today the in, out, swivel, typewriter music. You can add a music to your presentation. It's very easy, by the way. Think about it if it's really necessary. Usually music takes the audience to a different place. Unless you put Frank Sinatra and My Way, so probably they'll enjoy it and listen to My Way and Frank Sinatra. But usually they don't want to hear music, they want to hear whoever is speaking. This is something I really want you to remember, especially before coming to a conference. We have a kind of how to figure out how many minutes we need for each slide in a PowerPoint presentation. So, no more than 2 or 3 minutes per slide. That means in a presentation, in a conference, which usually is between 15 and 20 minutes, depend on our conference, divided by 3, no more than 10 slides. That's it, guys. That's it. No more. So when you sit at home and prepare your presentation, you can't prepare 120 slides. You don't have time for that. You want them to see the slide and you want to talk about what's on the screen. So no more than between 2 and 3 minutes. I actually even think about 3 minutes, and then you can talk. You can see how they react. You can go over things if you actually need it. I really like to add to my presentations pictures. And not illustrations, pictures. Now, there is a problem with pictures because usually we Google them. Not all of them I can use them. Some of them have copyrights, and I really have to check if I can use, especially in an international conference, because the presentations are going to go online. And I have to make sure that all of us use pictures that are either they don't have copyrights on them or that I'm permitted to use them. So check and double check. But try to give up, we can find a lot of pictures. People like to see pictures that they know what they say. So try and find them online. Using humor in a presentation is great, but, well, that sounds like really American, starting something and then saying, but, I'll say it anyway. We go online, all of us, all of the time, all of the day, and jokes, like either they're viral jokes or everybody sees everything over the Facebook. So try really, don't use a joke that you read yesterday over the internet. Because if you read it, most of the people in the room read it as well. Think of something that maybe it's special, somebody didn't hear about it. It's great using humor, especially when you want to lighten up the audience a little and you don't want them to sit, like frozen the whole time and sitting stiff. So it's great using humor, but really think about what kind of humor you're going to use. So now that we have like a general idea of how to present, I just want to give you one small example of what actually I do when I give a presentation in a conference. As you can see, it's a regular slide that I showed before. We do have a menu here, and I divided this menu into 4 parts. The first part is the theoretical background, because you know, it's a conference. People want to know a little more about what you're talking about. The second part is the method. The third part is results. And the fourth part is conclusion. It's actually just like writing a paper. Each part changes the color as I move down. So as you can see, just as I said before, what I just showed you, I do exactly the same thing when I give my presentations. Right now, I'm actually a consultant. You can either listen to what I say, you can do whatever you want to do, but if you use whatever I said, I really, really hope that you'll have a great presentation. But I do want to add a little joke. In the middle of nowhere, there's this great-looking guy coming in a convertible, parking his car. It's something like a desert. And he sees the shepherd with the sheep, like far away, and he does to him, you know, come here, come here. So the shepherd walks over and says, yes. He said, listen, if I'll tell you how many sheep you have, will you give me one of them? And the shepherd says, sure, why not? And he said, okay, hold on a second. He takes out his like mini laptop, opens it, puts all kind of whatever he has to do, like satellites, opens like 25 sheets of Excel, does all kind of things, and then he said, looks up to him and says, 356. And the shepherd says, great, you can go, walk, pick any one you want. So he walks over, picks one. It's a convertible, it's easy. He puts it into his car. And then the shepherd says, listen, if I'll tell you what you do, will you give me back my sheep? He said, of course. He said, you're a consultant. He said, tell me, how do you know? He said, I'll tell you. First of all, you came, nobody asked you to come. The second of all, you gave me information. I already had the information. I knew exactly how many sheep I have. And the third thing, you have no idea what I do because you just took my dog. So guys, have a great presentation. See you all in the conference. Bye.